One of Mexico's most iconic species, the monarch butterfly, has just lost perhaps its greatest advocate.
En Michoacán fueron trasladados al municipio de Ocampo los restos del protector de la mariposa monarca, Homero Gómez, en donde se le realiza un homenaje.
If we are to analyze Homero's death, he was saying things that perhaps other people didn't want to listen to, and he was also dealing with people linked to organized crime.
Homero Gómez, the manager of the sanctuary, was found dead after police say he was beaten and thrown down a well. His family says he had recently received threats warning him to stop the campaign against illegal logging.
Sí, mi padre fue asesinado. Nosotros creemos que puede que haya gente poderosa políticamente a nivel estado que esté protegiendo a esto. Parecía ser que entre más nombres iban saliendo de esos políticos, la investigación más iba disminuyendo.
Because the police investigation has been so opaque and because people are so fearful to speak and tell journalists the truth, because of the kind of society of fear which has been created around speaking truth to power, then it is likely that we might not ever know why Homero ended up in the irrigation ditch in late January 2020. The monarch butterfly migration is one of the most impressive natural phenomena in the world. Every year, swarms of black and orange colored butterflies, about the size of a small kind of saucer, travel 2,500 miles from North America, Canada area, all the way to the forests of central Mexico. The Rosario sanctuary where the story sort of takes place is in the state of Michoacan. It's a protected area with tremendous amounts of woodland, mainly pine. It's a very beautiful and very sort of singular area within Mexico, geographically and biologically speaking. Homero was a local to the area, to El Ejido del Rosario, which is in Michoacan. He grew up with the monarchs, and actually his grandparents often told him that the monarchs were effectively the spirits of his ancestors.
Mi nombre es Homero Gómez Valencia. Soy de la comunidad de San Luis, municipio de Ocampo, Michoacán. Mi padre era activista y defensor de la mariposa monarca. Soy estudiante de la carrera de Ingeniería Civil, pero estoy aquí ahora siguiendo las labores que hacía mi padre.
Hola, buenas tardes amigas y amigos, los saludo desde el Santuario del Rosario.
Yo desde niño, mi padre me llevaba todavía en brazos al Santuario de la mariposa monarca, entonces pues yo recuerdo que era algo maravilloso entrar y ver todas las mariposas volando alrededor mío. Fue cuando yo empecé a ver la importancia que tenía la mariposa monarca, no solamente para mí, para mi familia, sino para toda la comunidad y todo el municipio.
When you've got an area like a biosphere, which is obviously a very fertile place where there are lots of natural resources, you have all sorts of conflicts. So you have people that want to use the trees for logging, both legal and illegal. When there's so much money at stake and there's all this land which could be used, then yes, there are conflicting interests. Homero and his family worked in the timber industry, and the local environment which they inhabited was their biggest economic resource. So when the biosphere was formed or certain parts of it were protected over the years, Homero wasn't necessarily in favor. However, as the international community came in and the scientists were sort of observing this natural phenomenon, which is an incredible thing to witness, I think he began to see the butterfly as something extremely important and a way that could not only preserve the way of life that he had become used to in the community, but was something that was of national and international importance. He then became one of their biggest advocates and became an extremely important figure, both nationally and internationally, for the protection and the diffusion of the story of the monarch butterfly in Mexico and abroad.
Todas las personas, en cuanto llegaba la mariposa monarca, pues éramos como que más felices, ya que teníamos de dónde sacar nuestro dinero. Entonces, al ver todo eso, que toda la mariposa nos ayudaba en cuanto económicamente, pues fue cuando él decidió empezar su lucha para protección de sus animalitos. Entonces él poco a poco se fue involucrando al santuario de la mariposa monarca. Llegó al punto en que él fue el mayor influencer de aquí de nuestra zona, fue el que le daba toda la promoción al santuario de la mariposa monarca. Gracias a él llegaban miles de turistas aquí a nuestra zona.
Mira qué espectáculo.
He was a larger-than-life person. There's a Spanish expression called don de gentes, which is like a person who really has, a way with people. He was charismatic, charming, and he was the type of person that if they went to a local event, all the local politicians would know him.
Esta tarde me encuentro conviviendo con esta maravilla de la naturaleza llamada mariposa monarca.
He really was an advocate for the butterfly and worked extremely hard to tell their story. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I think he rubbed up a lot of local politicians the wrong way, as well as the local scientists. He had friends in powerful places as well. And I think that was just the nature of his job. When one wants to rise to become a public figure in Mexico and one is willing to criticize people openly, or even not criticize, but sort of fight against certain aims, then he or she puts himself at risk.
The southwest state of Michoacan is where Mexico's drug war began.
Michoacan state, where this story took place, is probably one of the most dangerous states in Mexico at present. It has lots of drug routes. It's full of natural resources, and also it is the epicenter for the avocado trade. What's happening now in Mexico is very interesting. Cartels are moving towards almost legitimizing themselves in a way. So they're moving into ordinary businesses, and they're moving into things like avocado trade, which is an incredibly lucrative trade, worth about $2.4 billion annually. And 80% of the avocados that are imported in the United States come from Mexico itself. The cartels will come in and use physical violence, wipe farmers off their land, take over the land, and therefore infiltrate themselves into the trade. There's almost like a civil war between the drug cartels in Michoacan state. So everyone's fighting for the drug smuggling routes, the avocado trade, the natural resources. And what happens when you exist in a state in which the authorities are corruptible is very easy to infiltrate these areas. And you've seen that a lot in the western part of the state, where the tactics have almost become medieval. People hanging from bridges, massacres, kidnappings of big avocado farmers, just because there's so much money at play. Where the sanctuary itself is situated is further to the east, so it's near the state of Mexico, closer to Mexico City itself. And that area isn't too affected by organized crime, but even so, the shadow, the looming nature of organized crime means that people are always wary of talking to outsiders. Homero's wife, Rebecca, lived in a constant state of fear because she knew where she lived. And she said that she would often tell him, please be careful. And he said, no, these people are my friends.
Pues él siempre nos decía que él andaba seguro en todos lados. A nosotros nunca nos dijo si alguna vez tuvo amenazas o alguna vez le hicieron decir algo, ya que él siempre me decía a mí que había cosas muy delicadas que ni nuestra familia podía saberlas para no preocuparlas. Entonces, pues él así fue, siempre que tenía algún problema no nos decía una vez que él lo había solucionado. Fue cuando ya nos contaba, pero ya que el problema estaba solucionado. Hubo problemas de los que yo creo que fueron sus últimos problemas que no pudo solucionar y por eso no nos lo contó nunca.
Around midday on January 13th, Homero Gómez attended what would be his last meeting. It was an ordinary meeting. It was to take place in the butterfly sanctuary, El Rosario. The only thing that people really remember from that meeting, in fact, is that Homero himself was receiving constant phone calls. His phone was buzzing constantly. According to some of the people who attended that meeting, he eventually picked up the phone, and the other person on the other end of the line was trying to convince him to go to a local event in a town called El Soldado, where there was like a local kind of fair. I think there was horse racing, drinking, eating, a local kind of party where a lot of the local politicians would be, activists, people that Homero normally kind of hung around with, so to speak. And he arrived, according to his family and to other people that attended the event in El Soldado, around about 4 or 5 p.m. There he met with local politicians, and they described him as being kind of normal, his normal charismatic self. And then it was around about 7, 8 p.m. that one of the politicians that I spoke to who was at the event saw him for the last time. Obviously people became very worried because In Mexico, if someone goes missing, then it's obviously a bad sign. And that's when his wife particularly began to worry, because she knew very well the types of people that Homero hung around with, who he dealt with. The next day they reported it to the police. The police said that they would take it very seriously because he was a public person. Within a matter of days, search parties were formed in which the family took part in, the national police, local police. I think even the federal police actually helped in these searches.
Entonces, no puede ser posible que todas las personas andamos buscando en el lugar en donde él desapareció. En el lugar en donde lo encontraron, pasamos a revisar que no hubiera nada ahí y no había absolutamente nada.
The days went on and the search party searched, kept searching, and nothing was found. That was until the 29th of January, when a local shepherd found the body of Homero Gómez in an irrigation ditch, which was about 150 meters from where the local fair had been taking place. One of the search brigades had searched that area about a week before, and they'd found absolutely nothing. Homero's son told me that people had even thrown stones down into the irrigation ditch to check to see if there was anything there.
Yo personalmente pasé a ese lugar con mi abuelo y más personas cercanas a mí, amigos y conocidos. Pasamos a ese lugar y no había absolutamente nada.
And while the police kind of kept quiet about this, that led a lot of people to suspect that the body had been put there after the fact. When the police came out and offered their official statement on the case, they said that the body had received blunt head trauma and had been strangled or asphyxiated. However, they weren't willing to say definitively that this had been a murder. It could have been an accident. While the family weren't obviously willing to believe this, Homero Jr. himself told me on many occasions that he thinks his father was murdered.
Sí, mi padre fue asesinado. La gente cercana al lugar en donde él fue encontrado, pues todas las noches reportaba mucho movimiento en esa zona, mucho movimiento de gente extraña en los bosques, en las casas ahí cercanas. ¿Y cómo fue posible que un día antes en la noche reportaron mucho movimiento de carros cercanos al lugar en donde fue encontrado mi padre? Cuando las investigaciones se fueron dando, fueron saliendo muchos nombres de políticos pesados aquí en el estado. Y entonces parecía ser que entre más nombres iban saliendo de esos políticos, la investigación más iba disminuyendo. Menos noticias teníamos nosotros, hasta que llegó el punto en sí que pues, todas las agencias de noticias de aquí del estado empezaron a tirarle directamente a esos políticos, y cuando llegó a ese punto las investigaciones se detuvieron completamente.
I regularly check in with the family and they say that there's been no update in the case, that no one really has been in contact with them, that the police seemingly have sort of forgotten. Being an activist is a very dangerous thing to be. Quite a few activists that in the last few years have been murdered for the message that they're trying to spread, in the same way that journalists, they are often murdered for trying to do their job or having become involved in corruption. And I think what that says about the state is that if you want to speak out against power or illicit activities, it's one of the most dangerous things that you can do. Because the police investigation has been so opaque and because people are so fearful to speak and tell journalists the truth, then it is likely that we might not ever know why he ended up in the irrigation ditch in late January 2020.